Icaro stared into the mirror, cold sweat trickling down the back of his neck. His reflection blinked, out of sync. The glass cracked. On the other side, something grotesque smiled, a distorted reflection, hungry. His father appeared in the hallway. "What's wrong, Icaro?" But he already knew. The monster wanted out. Icaro had always felt an inexplicable discomfort when looking into mirrors. Since childhood, something about them sent a chill down his spine, as if his reflection was watching him more intently than it should. Cone, his father, a skeptical and practical man, always dismissed it as mere imagination. Jennifer, his grandmother, a woman of old traditions, warned him, "Never stare at your reflection for too long, boy. Mirrors are windows, and some things look back." As a child, Icaro obeyed. But as he grew older, childish fear gave way to curiosity. Until, on his 17th birthday, he decided to challenge his grandmother's warning. That night, while his parents slept and the house was swallowed in silence, he stood before the large hallway mirror. The dim glow of the bedside lamp cast trembling shadows across his face. For a long minute, nothing happened. He smiled at himself, feeling foolish for ever believing in superstitions. But just as he turned to walk away, something strange happened. His reflection blinked, a second late. Icaro froze. A cold shiver ran down his spine. He tested it again, raising his right hand. The reflection did the same, but with a slight delay. His eyes widened. The sensation of being watched intensified, suffocating. The air felt thinner, his skin prickled, the sound of his own breathing suddenly too loud. Then, the reflection smiled. Not an ordinary smile. It was wrong, stretched too wide, as if each muscle in his face had been forcefully pulled. Teeth gleamed in the dim light. Icaro's stomach twisted. The reflection stepped forward, but Icaro hadn't moved. The mirror shuddered. A thin crack formed right down the center of the glass. Icaro screamed. He stumbled backward, his heart hammering in his chest. The mirror remained in front of him, now cracked, the dark, jagged fracture splitting his image in half. His reflection, distorted by the fissure, still smiled. But it was no longer just a reflection. That thing was watching him. Behind him, a muffled sound. Something scraped against the floor. Icaro spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the long, dark hallway stretching before him. Fear hung in the air like static electricity. He needed to get out. Now. Icaro ran down the hallway, his footsteps reverberating against the walls. Cold sweat covered his body, his mouth was dry. But as he passed the doorway to his room, something stopped him. "Icaro!" The voice whispered, deep, resonant. It didn't come from the hallway, nor from another room. It came from the mirror. His hair stood on end. Fear twisted into absolute terror. The voice wasn't his. It wasn't his father's. It wasn't his grandmother's. With uneven breaths, he turned back to face the mirror. The crack had spread. And on the other side, something dark pulsed, as if something was about to break through. The smile in the reflection stretched wider. Icaro felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. "Who's there?" His own voice faltered. The figure in the mirror tilted its head in a grotesque manner, its mouth moving without sound. Then, the crack widened, and a pale finger emerged, tapping against the glass with a dry click. Icaro screamed and fell backward. The glass shuddered. A second later, the reflection was gone. Silence. Panting, Icaro crawled away, his eyes fixed on the mirror's smooth surface. It was intact. No cracks. No sign of what he had just seen. But he knew. The monster from the mirrors was loose. That night, Icaro did not sleep. Every sound in the house felt amplified, every shadow seemed to move in a rhythm beyond his understanding. The mirror remained untouched, but something had changed. Something invisible. But palpable. The next morning, he decided to tell his father what had happened. Sitting at the breakfast table, his hands trembled as he stirred his spoon inside the cup. His father, a practical and always busy man, listened in silence, but his eyes carried a barely contained impatience. "Mirrors don't do that, Icaro. You're tired, your mind is playing tricks on you. Stop looking at them like that." Icaro opened his mouth to argue but gave up. He knew his father would never believe him. Only his grandmother would understand. After breakfast, he climbed into the attic, where his grandmother's belongings were still stored. He dug through dusty boxes, searching for anything that might give him answers. Between old books and forgotten relics, he found a worn leather notebook. Flipping through the pages anxiously, he read the fragile handwriting, the words heavy with meaning. "Mirrors are portals. The reflection is sometimes not our own. If one day it blinks out of sync, run." Icaro felt his stomach drop. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He wasn't crazy. A knock sounded outside the attic. He turned quickly, expecting to see his father. But no one was there. A chill ran down his spine. The sensation of being watched grew stronger. Slowly, Icaro descended the stairs. The hallway mirror awaited him. Now, more than ever, he knew he wasn't alone. For the rest of the day, Icaro avoided the mirror. His mind echoed his grandmother's words, "If one day it blinks out of sync, run." But run where? What do you do when the danger is inside your own home? By nightfall, he sat in his room, staring at the half-open door. The dark hallway felt like an invitation to something unknown. He tried to convince himself it was all in his head, but the truth refused to fade. Then, something happened. A soft crackling sound came from the hallway. Icaro froze. The sound came again, like fingernails scratching against glass. A shiver crawled up his spine. His breathing turned shallow. He knew exactly where that sound was coming from. The mirror was calling him. It took more courage than anything he had ever done to stand up. Icaro walked slowly toward the door, his heart hammering against his ribs. With each step, the sound grew clearer, sharper. When he finally reached the hallway, he saw it. The crack in the mirror had widened, like an open wound. And then, he saw it. The reflection was no longer just a reflection. The eyes were hollow and black, devoid of anything human. The mouth, twisted into a forced grin, opened in a jerky, unnatural movement. But the worst came next. The reflection took a step forward. Icaro did not move. But the thing inside the mirror did. The glass trembled, and a pale hand began to emerge from the crack. The long fingers slid out, dragging against the frame of the mirror. A voice echoed, hoarse and distorted. "Icaro." Icaro took a step back, but the cold wall pressed against his spine. There was nowhere to run. The mirror monster was coming through. He tried to scream, but his voice wouldn't come out. The air around him felt thick, as if the world itself was being sucked into the mirror. The creature kept emerging, its pale fingers dragging across the frame with slow, deliberate movements. The empty eyes of the reflection stared straight into him, as if devouring his soul. His body tensed against the wall. No escape. No way out. The glass trembled again, and the crack widened further, allowing the creature to pull part of its face through. It was him. But it wasn't. The skin was stretched, frozen in a warped, unnatural expression. The smile was carved too wide, as if sculpted by force onto a face that shouldn't be smiling. "Icaro," the voice rasped, sibilant. His heart nearly burst out of his chest. The creature lifted a leg and stepped through. Icaro watched as the mirror wavered like liquid around the monster's body before hardening again. It was coming through completely. Then he remembered his grandmother's journal. "If one day it blinks out of sync, run." But run where? How do you escape something that is you? A sharp crack echoed down the hallway. His father appeared in the doorway, his brows furrowing as he saw Icaro frozen in front of the mirror. "Icaro? What the hell is going on here?" His voice was firm, but confused. The creature turned. For the first time, Icaro saw its expression change. The thing inside the mirror feared his father. That moment of hesitation was all he needed. Icaro threw himself to the side, rolling out of the creature's reach. His father glanced between him and the mirror, but saw nothing. The reflection was gone. The glass was intact. No cracks. No trace of the thing that had been there. But Icaro knew. It was still there, hiding. And now, it knew it could come through. Silence filled the hallway. Icaro's heart pounded against his ribs, cold sweat dripping down his face. His father stood near the doorway, still frowning, trying to make sense of the situation. But Icaro knew. The monster was still inside the mirror, waiting. "You look pale. What happened here?" his father asked, stepping closer. Icaro didn't know how to answer. No one would believe him. If he told the truth, his father would send him to a psychiatrist, and while he was vulnerable, the creature might escape for good. He had to handle this alone. Just a waking nightmare. Nothing serious. He forced a smile, avoiding the mirror. His father sighed, still unconvinced, but didn't press further. "Get some rest. You look exhausted." As soon as his father walked away, Icaro turned back to the mirror. Whatever that thing was, it was still there. And now, it knew it could get out. He had to end this. Icaro ran back to the attic, digging through his grandmother's old belongings. He needed more answers. At the bottom of a dusty box, he found a small glass vial, filled with a thick, black liquid. A yellowed note rested beside it, written in his grandmother's delicate handwriting. "The reflection can only live as long as there is a mirror to hold it. If you wish to trap it forever, break the bond. But beware, it will fight back." Icaro clutched the vial tightly and rushed down the stairs. If this worked, he could finally be free. The hallway mirror awaited him. The crack had returned. The creature was trying to break through again. Without hesitation, Icaro uncorked the vial and poured the black liquid over the glass. The mirror shook violently, as if something inside was screaming. The crack spread wider, splitting open like ice under pressure. The monster fought to hold on, its black eyes burning with rage. Its distorted reflection twisted in agony. "You don't belong in this world," Icaro shouted, gripping a hammer. In one final, desperate move, the creature reached through the glass, its hand stretching toward him. Icaro didn't hesitate. With all his strength, he swung the hammer down. The mirror exploded. A muffled scream echoed through the house. And then, silence. As the dust settled, Icaro saw only shattered glass on the floor. No sign of the monster. The mirror was gone. The bond, broken. He collapsed onto his knees, exhaustion washing over him like a wave. It was over. Or so he thought. Later that night, as he walked past the bathroom, he paused in front of the small mirror above the sink. His reflection smiled. This time, Icaro didn't smile back.